Yeah, and I think it's interesting to compare that to some other companies that have also been working on Gen AI. So uh, last week, one of the original chatty applications that has also been thinking about how to use text as an operating system or operating capability also came out with Gen AI capabilities. Slack, of course, now a Salesforce company, but last week, they came out with their own set of capabilities around generative AI. And I know this has been a vision for them for a long time. Even before the LLMs really started impacting the world, Slack and Salesforce saw Slack as a potential capability to be the interface between users and applications. But they were lacking the natural language savvy that existed in LLMs. So now it feels like they're trying to kind of retrofit LLMs back into Slack and finally deliver on that vision.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a simple. I mean, this was the Slack announcement was a little bit of a yawn for me. It wasn't anything outrageous. Basically, it's summarization. You could certainly make the argument that Slack channels need summarization more than anything else, right? How long does it take me to read even a long email? But I can get lost in trying to follow a Slack channel and
Mm-hmm.
a Slack thread. So having summarization that is thread aware, I think is very valuable. And this kind of goes to what I'm talking about, right? This is an embedded piece, right? I could certainly use other AI tools and export the thread into it and ask it to summarize it, or have it apply as context. But in this case, just baked in. I hit a button and boom, I'm sort of caught up. And I also think it's a bit of a trend that we're going to see also continue to evolve, and that is what I call it the yawn factor. We're already getting past the point of the big sensational announcements, and we're now sort of hitting that stage where this is about actually practical applications, and it's not necessarily new, but that doesn't mean it's not transformative. We're going to talk later about Zendesk, and that's the absolute category that what they announced falls into, and but that doesn't mean I don't think it's going to be super impactful. So this one is a bit of a yawn because it's a pretty narrow advancement of what Slack is doing with it, but I think it's very directionally indicative of where things are headed and what I think you can expect to see across every platform.
Yes, and there's a race to see who can get the knowledge base and the process and the UX right. And across that world, you have a whole bunch of different players, everybody from, call it Slack to SharePoint to OpenText and its enterprise content management world, to the likes of ServiceNow, the automation anywheres. All of them have a piece of this puzzle that is actually quite necessary to make the big picture solution work. And Slack has to figure out how many of these pieces they can add on either via APIs or how many of the threads they have in Slack can work as part of the content management piece of the puzzle. There's so much to build, but everybody else also has to build bits and pieces of this to make this work.
Well, and that actually speaks to I think one of the challenges that we're going to have. So we spend a lot of time talking here from the vendor perspective, but if I look at it from a CIO's perspective or an enterprise IT perspective, we've in the past talked about the need for an AI strategy and about how that's almost a wasted term because there is not one AI strategy. There's all these pieces, and I think this is a classic case of that, or maybe like the opening salvo of this. If I'm starting to put together an AI strategy from an enterprise perspective, I'm looking at it from a handful of standpoints, right? First, you mentioned knowledge. This ability to activate knowledge databases, knowledge networks within the organization becomes incredibly important as we're going through this, and how and where I activate it, into what channels we activate it becomes critical. So one of the places I'm starting is I'm looking at where all of my knowledge repositories, how am I ensuring that those are available, and then what are all the activation points? Where do I have a Slack bot? Where do I have whatever the different agents are sitting in different platforms, and what information do they have access to, and is it the right information contextually, right? Because the challenge with, and this is why to me it's slightly yawny, the challenge with what this Slack bot is going to do is it's going to summarize what's in that channel. But what I
Mhm.
really need is the ability to contextualize that conversation with all of the institutional knowledge that exists within the organization that may be relevant to the conversation. And it's
Mhm.
right now reliant on a actor in that thread to bring in that spreadsheet or bring in that link to a database or whatever it is to
Mhm.
contextualize. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see these strategies evolve, and it's going to make the CIOs or the enterprise IT leaders job complicated, because right now we're sort of relying on the vendors. We're sort of saying, okay, Slack, when are you going to bring that button? Okay, Microsoft, what is this Copilot going to do for me? And
Mhm.
I think ultimately it's going to fall on the CIO or the enterprise IT group to actually orchestrate this, to weave it all together into a cohesive strategy that both simplifies the interface for my users, my consumers of that technology, and has a unified data model underneath it that actually allows me to activate with some confidence. And so I think this is going to become a complicated process as we get deeper into this.
Yeah.